I try. Okay. Dr. Brandish, I'm looking forward to hearing and getting to review this podcast. Nice to meet you quickly, and then we'll I'll let you guys do your thing.
All right,
Great.
brother. Thanks again. All right, fine. All right, Dr. Brandeis. So I'm going to be respectful of your time and my time. I know this is the only time we have some time in between, and I know Fridays are busy. So we're going to get you out of here no later than 2. Um, but I did want to just say that I'm going to ask you. We're going to lead off with that same question as last time. What's the most critical problem that you're currently trying to solve? And then Maura's going to start with the hero's journey, specifically developing a strong relationship with the doctor. Because I think nowadays there's so much animosity, and it's either one or the other, and it's like either don't trust your doctor at all or completely trust your doctor. And I want to get the nuance from you, and then we'll ask you about creating a masculine space. We'll talk about circumcision because I just wanted you to share that with the audience because I think that's a good one. Sugar consumption and immune function and sexual performance, and then electronic addiction and similarly porn addiction and its effects on sexual performance.
And I have an amazing muscle building protocol for men over 50.
And what is that?
I, I've I have a case series of men in their 60s, between 60 and 70, where in 4 months I've been able to build 5 to 10 pounds of muscle
Wow,
and take off 10 to 20 pounds of fat.
That's
that's
unreal.
amazing.
It's staggering,
That is
Wow.
pretty
and it's
great.
totally reproducible. And it's these guys that are doing it are professionals. They're you know businessmen, lawyers. They're not doing anything. So I'm a spokesperson for BTL M Sculpt,
Okay.
and that's part of it. I'm an ambassador for InBody, so body
Oh yeah.
composition analysis,
Yeah, we
right?
love this
Because
one.
men have to. I'm going to speak in generalities for most of this, but men like data, right? They need to see the needle moving. Women will look in the mirror and say, regardless of the data, do I look better or do I not look better? But guys need to see data. Guys are very data driven. And the other thing is you need testosterone. In your 60s, if you want to build muscle, you have to have testosterone.
Yeah.
But I have a whole protocol that's very simple, very sort of, it's very elegant in its simplicity. But I'd be happy to kind of talk to your audience about that. Building muscle in a 20-year-old, go to McDonald's and go to the gym.
It's so true,
Yeah.
man.
Oh, for
But
It's
sure.
so true.
but
Yeah.
building muscle in someone over 50, they really have to understand how the physiology changes.
Yeah, I'd
And
love to hear
so,
that because
Yeah, for sure.
we've talked about this with women, and what the effects of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, and the effects on
absolutely,
cortisol and all these other things that women have to measure, have to manage at that level. So I'm interested in hearing, the guy side. So I'll
absolutely.
I think what we're gonna do in respect of your time is we'll leave we'll record the intro after.
Yeah, let's do the intro after.
Yeah. So we
Great.
will just start in the middle of the conversation. I'm
Perfect.
gonna I'm gonna clap. So watch your ears. It gets kind of loud. Welcome to the Fat Fuel Family Podcast. I'm your host Danny Vega, and I am joined um, by my beautiful wife,
Oh,
Maura. You're
okay.
beautiful, my
Let's
love.
keeping it simple
Yeah,
today.
yeah. Keeping the adjective simples today.
I'm doing good.
Life is so much better right now. Life is going well.
Yeah, yeah. Things are.
A lot of
That's how
things
it is.
coming
It
to
always ebbs
fruition.
and flows, doesn't it? Right.
Yeah, we're entering a time now where our work is finally coming to fruition, finishing my kids' book, my children's book, our app and all that good stuff. But we want to get right to it to talk to our guest today because he's not a stranger to the show. This is his second time on
Yeah.
the show. We love Dr. Brandeis. Last time he completely blew our minds with sexual optimization, but today we're going to talk all about the 21st century man, his 900-page, like I said, magnum opus. Welcome to the show, Dr. Brandeis. Welcome
Uh,
back.
Welcome
Oh,
back.
it's really an honor to be here. I'm so happy that you guys allowed me back.
Yeah, no, we had an awesome episode with you. It's funny because we've done several episodes on specific topics, and I would say that with the several people we've talked to about, sexual optimization, you've been our favorite, man. I'm telling you, you
Oh,
just
I appreciate it.
I'm still talking about L-citrulline, to this day. I'm still talking about Affirm and your products, and it's so funny because we were going back and forth about L-arginine and increasing nitric oxide, and it's been really cool to see how some people are putting the dots, connecting the dots with that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Now, you know, what I really want to talk about today is men.
Yeah.
I've settled on men between the ages of 35 and 85 as my expertise.
Yeah.
And men are really having a tough time. Whether people want to admit it or not, whether they want to talk about it or not, 100 years ago, women lived 1 year longer than men. Now, women live 5 years longer than men.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a big deal,
That is a big deal.
right? And about 5 years ago, there was a group in Princeton that won the Nobel Prize for discovering a demographic trend that's never been seen before. Middle-aged white men are actually living less long than ever before,
Wow.
right? There's actually a decline in longevity in a civilized society. And so the question is why? It's called diseases of despair. It's because of
Yeah.
alcohol, opioids, and suicide. Right? So how did we get here? Why is this happening? That's really the critical question that we have to ask. And this is why I wrote the book. Because I take care of men between the ages of 35 and 85, and I see what's happening. And the issue is men are supposed to be strong, right? We're supposed to be strong in the workplace. We're supposed to be strong at home. We're supposed to be strong in the community. And we're supposed to be self-sufficient. We teach the people around us that we don't need help, that we can take care of ourselves. And the guys that I see are really good guys that come into my office, but they're in their late 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s, and something just breaks. They begin to break down. And if they understood that it was important to take care of themselves, and they understood how to take care of themselves, then they wouldn't be coming into my office in the bad shape that they are.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned that it's this diseases of despair. It reminds me, is it Emerson? Most men lead, quiet lives of quiet desperation.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
obvious that there's some interplay between what you said about men saying that they don't need help, and us getting to where we've gotten, right?
Yeah.
We've allowed things to get so bad because of our, I don't know, supposed gender role, but I think
Right.
a strong man knows how to ask for help, right?
Absolutely. I mean, or they know how to help themselves. There's a chapter in the book on stupid things that men do to injure themselves, right? And it's written by a friend of mine who's an emergency room physician. Fantastic, Malcolm Johnson. He's an outstanding emergency room physician, and so we pull all sorts of amazing statistics, and one statistic stands out: 90% of eye injuries are preventable with eye protection.
Wow, yeah.
Wow.
Right?
Right.
I mean, here's like the simplest thing. Put on a pair of glasses when you take your Sawzall out in the backyard to cut a stump or to cut a fence or something like that. Guys don't even do that.
Yeah,
So
do you
then they do
remember?
that and a splinter goes into their eye and they're blind in one eye, and it happens. And people want to pretend like it doesn't happen. All you have to do is put a pair of sunglasses or a pair of goggles on, or 50% of hand injuries are preventable by wearing gloves. So when you're working outside in the garden, just put a pair of gloves on.
Yeah.
But guys are, oh, I'm strong, I can take care of myself, I can do everything. And then, 2 hours later, you end up in the emergency room and you're blind in one eye.
Yeah, did you see? I don't know if you happen to see Bob Ross's documentary, but it reminds me of one of the things that he was doing. He was using that paint, and he was kind of shaking the brushes to wipe off the excess
Yeah,
paint,
yeah.
and all that particulate was coming into his nose and probably associated with the cancer that he got. It's something like that we just don't have that awareness.
Exactly. You have to protect yourself.
Yep.
I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
We're not invincible. We think we're invincible, but we're not invincible. And, men that were much more likely to have dangerous occupations, and we're much less likely to go to the doctor.
Yes. Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's critical. And part of it is because of men are stubborn, and part of it is because the healthcare system in this country is so messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a physician who has been working in the healthcare system for 25 years, I can tell you that our healthcare system is messed up. But because of that, with Jim Korkos and a number of Masters of Public Health students at UC Berkeley, we wrote an amazing chapter on health insurance.
Oh yeah, that's another big.
So if because men, we run companies, and we run families, with our spouses, and we have to choose health insurance. And how can you choose health insurance unless you actually understand health insurance? And so we have an amazing Cliff Notes version of health insurance that will explain everything to you. HMOs, PPOs, EPOs, Medicare, Medi-Cal, deductibles, medication plans. You're going to get the bird's eye view of everything.
I love that.
But the other part of it is I explain to patients, to men, how to make the most of your doctor visit. Okay, guess how many minutes the average patient has at their doctor's office
With the doctor?
with the doctor. Well,
5 minutes.
4 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say 5.
yeah. So there was a study done by Cerner, which is one of the electronic medical record system. They looked at 100 million charts, and they found the average encounter, the time that the patient was in the room, was 16 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I don't know how many was actually spent with the doctor. They couldn't really quantify that, but you have to prepare for those 16 minutes if you want to get the most out of that. If you just come in and flop yourself into the chair and have the doctor run the encounter and try to get information out of you, and you spend 2 or 3 minutes talking about your pet cat or the weather, you're not going to get what you came there for. Okay, and so there's a whole section in the book. What you need to do is you need to come in there with a summary of your health, right? What medical problems have you had in the past? What surgeries have you had in the past? What's your family history? Do you drink? Do you smoke? All that kind of stuff. And there are resources out there if you don't want to put it together for yourself. There are a lot of resources out there, including my website, the21stcenturyman.com, that will have those kind of forms for you. Then you have to have a list of your medications, a list of labs, a list of imaging studies, all the information that your doctor needs to understand what your health is.
Yeah.
And then you have to have a description of what we call the history of present illness, right? So if you're coming in for back pain, okay, my back pain started 2 weeks ago. It's in my lower back, mostly on my left side. It shoots down my leg. It's worse when I'm standing. It's better when I'm sitting. I've been taking some ibuprofen. That seems to help. Tylenol doesn't help. I've had this back pain 3 years before and I needed an epidural. Like everything that you think that the doctor might need to know. And write it out on a piece of paper. And then write out a list of questions for the doctor. And hand that packet of paper to the doctor. And you'll see a big smile on the doctor's face. And what I do is I have a voice dictation system, and I'll just dictate all of that right into my system. It takes me about 3 or 4 minutes. I'll pick out what's called the pertinent positive. So you give me everything, I'll just pick out what's important. And then you know what? We got 10 minutes. I can spend that 10 minutes talking to you about what I think the problem is or asking you more pointed questions. And then I can spend time talking to you about the solution And if I put you on medication, I can talk to you about the side effects of the medication, or what would be involved in surgery or therapy or any of that kind of stuff. But if you don't come in to that doctor's visit prepared, guess what? You're going to leave there and you're not going to get the information that you wanted from the doctor. And you know what? In a certain sense, it's your fault. It's not the doctor's fault, because the way that the system is, it's ground the doctor down to the ground.
Yeah.
The doctors have just become robots on a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and can I add something? I just want to say, for everyone listening, I want you guys to connect the dots that I just connected, because we've been saying for a long time now that, we need to take responsibility for our health. This does not mean that you completely neglect, the expertise of a doctor in the areas that they can help you, and just say take advantage of your, or take control of your health, and it's all on you. No, what we're talking about is this very thing right here, because we're making use of that time much better, because we were prepared and we took control of our health, and we understood, based on what Dr. Brandeis just said, how important it is to talk about tracking whatever it is, if it's something acute that happened recently, tracking the severity of it, simple things like that are going to make his job so much easier, and you're going to get what you need too. And we were talking before we got on the air, Dr. Brandeis, and I was like, is this guy a Joseph Campbell fan? Because the hero's journey is what the book is. Really, really cool the way it's laid out. And speaking of the hero's journey, it's broken down into all these different sections, and the hero's journey is one of them. And I love it, obviously, because it's it's that timeless trope. But you also said you're going to take everything more seriously if you think of yourself as this hero on this journey. Like, the hero doesn't go and watch some porn and waste his seed and have all the stuff like that, because he's he knows the effects, he's going to take care of himself. But specifically, the developing a strong relationship with their doctor. You mentioned the things that you just mentioned. Are there any other things that we can do to really solidify the trust and that working relationship with our healthcare providers?
Well, you have to understand it's a partnership,
Yeah.
right? That's what it really is. And I think the problem is that, and part of it's because doctors really don't get out there and use the social media, use podcasts like your podcast, use the thing. They're not going to the places where patients are getting information. And a lot of those places are populated with people that really don't have the expertise. So for example, like I went to an Ivy League college, a top medical school. I did research at Harvard Medical School. I went to a top residency program. I was one of the first docs in the country to do surgical robotics. I've been in practice for 20 years. I've won all sorts of awards in practice. Like, you want to get your information from me, or people like me, the people that I have in the book. You want to get your information from those folks. But the problem is those folks are seeing one patient at a time. And it's hard to get in to see those folks. And so the people that are on the internet populating, the airwaves, are people that are kind of talking about sometimes things that they don't really know about. Or when you're in medical practice for long enough, you develop an intuition. You can look at a patient and know something's wrong. You may not know what's wrong. Think about an experienced pediatrician, right? Pediatricians have really tough jobs. They see 100 kids, and one of those kids is going to have a problem. And they can't go full court press on every kid that says, my elbow hurts or my knee hurts. But they have to know, they have to have that intuition, that little voice inside them that says, what, this kid, he's complaining more about his leg, and they're going to find his Ewing sarcoma, which is a bone cancer in the kid. But they can't do that for every kid. They can't send every kid off for an x-ray that has leg pain. So, what you're really relying on is the experience, the intuition, of doctors, and doctors need to do a better job of getting the message out about healthcare. But on the flip side, consumers of healthcare information have to do a better job of vetting the information that they get. What are the qualifications of this person? Why are they qualified to say? I was talking the other day to one of my patients who's a very experienced dermatologist. He's been practicing dermatology for 40 years. And we were talking about this, and I said, have you ever been on a podcast? Have you ever been on TV talking about this stuff? He's like, no, of course not. Why would I do that? And I said, because the people that are talking about skincare are, 25-year-old models holding up little packages of skin cream.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right.
They're
Right.
selling stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, they're selling stuff. They're making up all sorts of crazy stuff. Like this will make you look younger. This will make you look better. Because the board certified dermatologists aren't talking about it, and so other people jump in, fill the void, and sell stuff.
Yeah, and they're held by those standards, and they know they can't make claims without backing them up. And most people that are, I wouldn't say most people, a lot of people that I see doing what you're saying don't even have the notion in their mind that they can't make claims without backing them up. They use all types of language that a scientist would never use, but it sells units.
Exactly. But and then at the end of the commercial, they say, well, if you have a question, call your doctor.
Yeah.
Right.
Cover your bases, yeah.
Right.
But the thing is, you're not going to your doctor prepared well enough to give your doctor the time to explain it to you. And what people need to understand is that Medicare hasn't given doctors a raise in 20 years. So doctors make the same amount of money or less than they made 20 years ago, but in real dollars, it's half or less.
And more
So
paperwork and more,
exactly.
all of the legal stuff and all of the charting and the insurance, the hiring more people, all that stuff.
Yeah, so just go into that meeting with your doctor really prepared and look at your doctor like your partner in taking care of your health. And let's try to get the most together out of this patient encounter so that we both can make the most of it.
Yeah.
And that's along the lines of the hero's journey. If you're punching the clock every day in life, just waiting to get Social Security or die, you're not going to do the right thing. But if you see yourself, as the hero of your own life, you can really make an impact on your family, raising your kids, on your job, in your community. Why would you go out and get drunk? Or why would you go out and do drugs? Or why would you go to Dairy Queen and have a blizzard that's 3,000 calories? You would take much better care of yourself if you thought you were a hero. Like people look at the football players, right? And they get all pissed off, oh, that guy, he was out partying the night before the big game. But big deal, that's a game. This is your life.
Yeah. Great point.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So, in your section on, making life fun, you talk about creating a masculine space. What does that look like, in your opinion?
Yeah, so a good friend of mine, Michael Tebb, he's just an absolutely amazing landscape designer. And he envisions space in a way that very few people can. And you want to have the man's home is his castle, right? You want to have a place that you can come home to that feels comfortable for you, that energizes you, that's kind of your fort that you emerge from every day when you go to work or whatever you do, that gives you strength that then you can return home to recharge. And the book, for me was an all-inclusive effort. I have a disclaimer in the beginning of the book saying that I don't talk about issues of race, ethnicity, culture, sexual orientation, because that's not my expertise. There are other people that are far more qualified to write that book than I am. You know, I focus on what there are commonalities among men, right? And finding a place of strength and of healing and of comfort is a very individualized thing. And so what we really talk about in that chapter is how that process works. You know, how you can go through magazines and the internet and find things that resonate with you, you know, whether it's materials or colors or textures, and then use that to kind of create a template for building a space that's really comfortable for you. For example, at my medical practice, Brandeis MD, we did that because we understand that coming to an office and talking to a stranger, even a stranger with a bunch of diplomas on his wall, about really, really personal things is really hard. But I have to kind of crack that nut really quickly. I'm not a psychologist. I can't spend 3 hours kind of vetting that information. So I have masculine colors in my office. I have masculine materials. I have big wooden, stained wood desks and tables. I have a playlist. If you want a cool playlist, go to Spotify. It's Brandeis MD Lounge.
Oh, I love.
It's all my favorite music. And that's I have 2,000 songs.
What is it?
Brandeis, it's on Spotify. It's called Brandeis MD Lounge.
Oh, it's happening.
So it's rock and roll, it's jazz, it's
I love it.
there's hip hop on there, there's blues, there's you know, all sorts of cool music that,
That's great.
you know, when guys walk into my office, it puts them at ease.
Yeah.
You know, for example, I had a patient, he was in his mid-50s, he was a contractor, and he came in to see me for erectile dysfunction, and we were talking, and things just didn't quite make sense. You know, and I just kind of kept pushing him a little bit. And finally, he looked up at me, and there were tears in his eyes, and he said, you know what, I didn't tell you, but I was a methamphetamine addict for 15 years. You know, and I've been clean for 15 years, and, you know, I've done really well, and I've, you know, a company, but all of a sudden, things made sense. Right? And I was able to really help him in a very significant way. But until you actually put all your cards out on the table, I can't help you.
Yep.
But it's my responsibility to create an environment that you feel comfortable enough to talk about those kind of things.
Yeah, and I'll just say that it's not a few of the things that you've mentioned, Dr. Brandeis. You know, it's just to your credit. I don't see it quite often, but when I do see it, it makes a big difference. For example, you know, I was a medical device rep for over a decade, and I worked with women's health, and I would see there's a specific group here in Tampa, just so happened to be my highest volume customer. Go figure, right? Business is good because they're doing the right thing. Like if you see the work that they put into the design of their office, every single thing from the waiting room to the rooms, the procedure rooms, all of that, it's just, you could tell like there's certain music playing. It's the same exact thing. And even the thing about the intuition, you know, I just was talking to a client of mine who was like, you know, I was like, well, this sounds like a cortisol issue. What did the doctor say? You know, and because he switched to a carnivore diet, he lost an hour of sleep a night. He started getting like tachycardia. I'm like, man, that sounds like cortisol to me. And, you know, the doctor, you know, read his blood work and, you know, didn't quite have that intuition, and this didn't even come up. So, you know, on one hand, you got all these people that they'll go into the doctor, they have rosacea, they have obvious autoimmune issues, but they get blood work and they go home and the doctor just sends them home. At the same time, these people aren't being vocal enough and not really putting it out all on the table, whether it's, you know, whether they're closed off or whether they're embarrassed for whatever reason, because that's another big one you mentioned, you know, the erectile dysfunction. People don't even talk to you about it unless you pry it out of them. So it just goes to show, I mean, I really hope, I know the people that we know, a lot of doctors that we know are taking that, really taking ownership of that position and perfecting the practice part of medical practice, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I wrote the book. The book is all about prevention and early intervention. And there are 60 other outstanding doctors and medical professionals. Because I'm one of those people, like, if I'm not an expert in the eye, then my good friend Ahad Muhuchi, who's an ophthalmologist in Tampa and is probably the top private practice ophthalmologist in the state of Florida.
Wow.
Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, oh, and he's a great guy. He's
Or Tampa.
hilarious.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah,
good to know.
yeah, absolutely. It's I forget exactly what his website is, but if you go to the 21stcenturyman.com, you can find his practice. So he's amazing. Done 28,000 eye operations, and he's always the first
Wow.
on the block to do the newest and latest, greatest things. But if I have an eye question, I call him.
Yeah.
Why would I self-diagnose myself with an eye problem or someone in my family? I'm going to go to the top guy, and he put in the book everything that you need to do to take care of your vision. There's a supplement called lutein, which prevents age-related macular degeneration, and we all should be taking it at a certain age, right? These are the kind of things that are in the book, Or I have the team physician for the Oakland A's, Will Workman, who wrote a chapter on how to prevent hip, knee, and shoulder replacement. Right? How many people do you know that get hip, knee, and shoulder replacements? Right?
More and more every year, and
Of
younger and
course.
younger. Yeah.
Right. So, but why wouldn't you try to prevent that?
Yeah.
Keep your own parts rather than go into a big operation and get a metal knee. Or
Yeah.
Mike Murphy, he's a Stanford ear, nose, and throat doctor, wrote an amazing chapter on hearing, right? How to prevent hearing loss. Why go for a hearing aid when there are things you can do to prevent hearing loss?
Right.
It's up to us to be proactive about our health. And this book, it gives you there's an amazing section on heart health written by Joel Kahn, who's a nationally known cardiologist that has,
Dr.
Instagram
Kahn.
channels. Yeah, he's an amazing guy. And he tells you, these are the things to do. He talks about a calcium score, right? There's there's like a 2-minute test. I had it done 3-4 months ago. It takes literally 1 or 2 minutes. It's not expensive. And it gives you a calcium score. It gives you a score that correlates with the amount of cardiovascular disease that you have.
So huge. So
So
important.
huge.
Yeah, more important than anything, honestly, like that. And I think I haven't read that section, but I mean, looking at your your what is it? Your CAC score and your HSCRP is another great one.
Right.
Is awesome. I love that every book that I've read that does this. Dave Asprey wrote one called Game Changers.
Right.
Yeah.
It's this whole idea of like standing on the shoulders of giants. Like taking all your expert friends and bringing them together for this big badass book that's covering specific sections, and all of them are experts in that section. I did want to ask you about the in sexual medicine, about circumcision. Just because you talk about preventing versus dealing with the issue later, and we know that our first, well, I'm always giving away personal
Everything.
information, so I was like, wait, let me hold up. But anyways, like, parents learn about these things with circumcision, and they may change the way they approach it, learning some of the things that we did. What would you say with circumcision? Some of the things that expecting parents should probably know before they decide to do that.
Sure. So there's no definitive health reason to get a circumcision,
To do it.
right?
Yeah.
To do it. So like a parent shouldn't be chastised for not doing it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, but at the same time, there is a decreased risk of infections, both at the early childhood age of urinary tract infections, and then I see a lot of men in their 70s, 80s, 90s who get infections because they're circumcised. They're not circumcised. Okay. And as you get older, it becomes more and more difficult to maintain cleanliness and hygiene when you're uncircumcised.
Gotcha.
right? When you're in your 20s or 30s, it doesn't really matter. But we're talking about, 70s, 80s, when it becomes more and more difficult to keep yourself clean. The
How
other
hard
thing is,
how hard is it to treat it once someone in that age has that comes up? Is it just simple?
well, it's kind of a mess because the foreskin is closed down, it's scarred, and it's infected.
Oh wow! So they have to open it up a bit, or I mean,
Well, you have to open it up, but the thing is, when you're operating on infected, necrotic old tissue that doesn't hold together very well, that's a big problem.
so do they get circumcised? Is that one of the courses of
Well, a
action?
lot of times what you have to do is what's called a dorsal slit, which is where you basically just make a single slit on the foreskin to open up the foreskin so that you can expose the infection to allow the infection to drain and the tissue to heal. And then, if the man wants it, then you can complete the circumcision at a later time.
Gotcha.
Because you can't operate, especially something sort of as sensitive and cosmetic as the penis, in an infected field because you're going to get, it's going to look like a mess.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, that is more complicated than I would have thought. So you're talking
Right.
about multiple procedures if if the infection is bad enough.
Right. And no one ever gets penile cancer if they have a circumcision. Right.
Interesting.
Penile cancer is rare. It's not something that's super common, but you're basically totally eliminating your risk by circumcision.
Now bring that around because it seems to me like if we're looking at the risk benefit ratios for stuff, we got a good 40, 50 years where we really want to use this thing well and we want to feel it and we want to feel good and we want everybody else to feel good too. So, that's what I'm thinking about.
Right.
Because I know those are a lot of things to think about as well.
Yeah. I mean, the argument that the sensation is better with a uncircumcised penis than a circumcised penis, I think that's purely subjective. I don't think that there's any way that I always look at things from a researcher's perspective,
Because it's subjective, yeah.
right? I mean, how would you go about studying that?
Yeah.
You can't possibly do a level 1 evidence-based study with that.
Yeah, and so it's purely subjective, and I don't think we should be criticizing parents for doing one or the other.
Right.
It's just to me, it's just purely a personal choice, and it's one of those things. Get your hands off my body.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
It's like I'm not going to march to Washington. I don't think there's ever going to be a Supreme Court case on circumcision, but
Yeah, I know.
but get your hands off my penis.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so switching gears, I mean, you mentioned how sugar consumption affects several aspects of our health. Obviously, this is right in line with what we believe as well, and even our immune function. Are there any noticeable direct or even indirect effects of sugar on sexual performance?
Well, see, now this is where you talk about someone who said, we can see far because we stand on the shoulder of giants. The person that actually taught me that was a guy named Bernie Churchill. And he wrote a chapter at the end of the book on gratitude. And I feel a tremendous sense of gratitude for Dr. Churchill because he taught me so much. He was a pediatric urologist, and we would stand together for 6 or 8 hours reconstructing kids' genitalia and bladders and so on and so forth. And during that time, he had just this incredible ability to explain things from a macro to micro way. And so the way that we explain nutrition and sugar in the book is from a macro to micro way. When I ask my patients, because I always, my poor patients get, they're my lab rats.
Yeah.
I try all sorts of new stuff on them, and try to explain things in different ways. And I ask them, well, what is sugar? And no one really understands what sugar is. And the way I explain sugar starts with day 2 of Genesis, right? Let there be light. Okay, what's light? Light is the sun. What's the sun? The sun is a huge ball of energy. And we get 1/1000th of the amount of energy on Earth that the sun kicks out. Okay, that 1/1000th of the energy of the sun comes down to Earth. And what do? Well, we have trees. Trees have chlorophyll.
They're
And
autotrophic.
chlorophyll
Right.
captures that energy. And it combines it with water, and it combines it with carbon dioxide, and it makes it into sugar, into glucose, right? Glucose is a storage form of energy. It's almost like a battery, right? And then what do animals do? Well, we eat the sugar, right? We eat fruit, we eat vegetables, we eat, all sorts of stuff, nuts that captures the sugar, and then we use it for energy, or we eat animals that have eaten the sugar.
And they turn
And
it
so
into
sugar is a form of energy, which is great, right? And so if you ever watch the TV show Naked and Afraid, it's one of my favorite shows.
Love
We
that
love that
show.
show.
Yeah, right.
So good.
What happens on Naked and Afraid?
They need protein. They're always looking. even
Well,
the
they
vegans-
lose 20 or 25 pounds
Oh,
in
yeah.
less than a month, right?
Yeah.
How come? Because food is hard to come by,
Yeah.
right? Sugar is it's gold. It's a resource.
Yeah.
100 years ago, we used to eat 2 grams of sugar, or 2 pounds, maybe it's 2 pounds of sugar a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we eat 135 pounds of sugar a year,
Yeah.
right? So, sugar is gold. Your brain runs on glucose. Your body runs on sugar. The problem is we can call up, Uber Eats and get, a Dairy Queen Blizzard and a Chipotle burrito and wolf down 4,000 calories in an hour,
Yeah.
right? And one really critically important fact that people need to know is how many calories, because calorie is a form of heat. It's a form of energy. Most people don't understand that, right? Yeah. See, these are the things, like I had a patient the other day come in and said, I'm eating buffalo protein. Do you think it's better than cow protein? Like, I don't know. I have no idea. And honestly, I don't care. Because you don't even know the basics. 3,500 calories equals 1 pound of human fat. Right? So you have to burn an extra 3,500 calories of energy in order to lose 1 pound of human fat. Those are the critical things that you need to understand. And so if you're wolfing down sugar and putting away 500 calories, you know what? You're going to have to work out 1 hour a day just to burn that energy. And the other really critically important thing that people need to understand is, what is your basal metabolic rate?
Yeah.
Right? I tell my patients, you need to know what your BMR is even more than your birthday. Right? Your BMR, for your listeners that may not know, is the number of calories that you burn just being alive.
Yep.
So your brain functioning, your intestines functioning, your heart functioning, your liver functioning, your kidneys functioning, and really the thing that you can modulate is the amount of muscle that you have. So I have patients that come in and their BMR is 1,1400,
Wow, that's low.
right? Because they're 80 years old or older, or they have very little muscle. And I had a patient the other day who plays for the San Francisco 49ers, and he has 140 pounds of muscle, and his BMR was 2,800. Right, so he's got to eat 2,800 calories a day just to maintain. And so you got to know that number, because how can you lose weight? How can you be healthy without knowing that number? So,
And the in-body calculates the BMR and the RMR, right? If I remember correctly.
what do you mean by RMR?
Resting metabolic rate. It's a little bit more. I think it's a little bit more than your basal. Actually, your basal is
Yeah.
low. So
Yeah,
I'm thinking of another metabolic rate.
Yeah, the in-body creates the BMR, basal metabolic rate. And so you can get a rough estimate based on your height and weight, but since the in-body understands how much muscle you have, it's a much more accurate assessment of what your BMR is.
Because you mentioned the heat, and having muscle produces more heat. It's less efficient, so they're gonna
Exactly.
need more calories, more heat, more energy.
Exactly. And that's why people, my patients come in and I try to explain to them what's alcohol. People drink alcohol. It's a huge problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Especially post-pandemic, people drink alcohol.
it's
Yeah.
an
Not only,
intoxicant. It intoxicates you.
Yeah.
well, it intoxicates, but it's also a depressant,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So the class of medication it's a depressant. It reduces your inhibitions, but also, you can burn it as fuel,
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
it's the
right?
number one fuel preference. It's got to burn through that before even sugar and anything else.
Exactly. So, you can light it on fire, but it doesn't have any nutritional value. Doesn't have any protein, doesn't have any minerals, doesn't have any vitamins, right? So you're basically just eating or drinking pure fuel. So pure fuel is going to make you fat, it's going to make you stupid, and it's going to make you sad. So the thing is, like, if you're doing great, if you're in good shape and you have your life together, go ahead, drink as much alcohol as you want. But if you're overweight, if you're mildly depressed, if you're potentially can make bad decisions in your life, really alcohol is not the thing that you should be taking in. And there's a whole chapter in the book on alcohol and the statistics behind alcohol.
Well, doctor,
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, I feel like an hour is not even close to get into all this stuff.
I
Like,
know.
there's so many sections that we didn't even talk about. I mean, it's one of those things. But because of that, I want to know when is this book coming out? When are people going to be able to purchase it? And where can people find you online? You mentioned your website, but just one more time for everybody.
Yeah, so my own personal medical practice website is Brandeis MD, Brandeis MD. And then my supplement website is Affirm Science, AFFIRM Science.com. And we make a nitric oxide boosting supplement, a supplement for premature ejaculation, a supplement for prostate health, and then a supplement for testosterone boosting, which is really an interesting supplement. There's so many supplements out there that, quote, boost testosterone. But let me be clear, there's no supplement that can really dramatically improve testosterone. Nothing.
Yeah.
The best you're going to do is what we are able to do with support, which is our supplement, which is DHEA. So DHEA is a testosterone precursor. Your body uses DHEA to make testosterone. But the problem with DHEA was that it makes testosterone, but it also makes estrogen. And so what we added is something called DIM, which you get from cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, and it's an aromatase inhibitor, so it blocks the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. So you get more testosterone, less estrogen, and then we added some ashwagandha and some Tongkat Ali, which have some decent data on
Oh
improving
yeah, I've heard a
testosterone.
lot about Tomcat Ali recently.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, I forgot where
Exactly.
I heard that. That's a pretty cutting edge one that I've recently just started reading about.
Exactly. So if you're a guy and your testosterone's 350 or 400 or even 450 and you want to boost, something like support from Affirm Science is something that will give you about a 15% boost. But if your testosterone's down at 250 or 300 and you want to get it up to 900 or 1,000, there's no supplement on earth that's going to do that. You need testosterone replacement. And there's an amazing chapter in the book on testosterone written by Dr. Gary Donovitz, who's the chairman, founder of BioT, which is the largest testosterone replacement company in the country. And they do an absolutely amazing job training doctors. There are 4,300 doctors that are BioT providers.
Wow.
There's seriously, I have the cream of the crop writing chapters, all these. There's an amazing chapter on PRP, platelet-rich plasma, written by none other than Charles Runnels, the guy that just, branded the P shot, the O shot, the vampire facelift. For those of the people out there considering stem cells, I have an unbelievable chapter on stem cells written by Jeff Piccirillo. He's a regenerative orthopedist,
Ooh.
right? Because people have to understand, what is a stem cell. I could talk for an hour on what stem cells are, or you could read, get the book and read the chapter. And the book website is the 21st Century Man, all written out.com. And so you'll be able to buy the hardcover book in December, because there's a paper shortage. And so, the paper for my book is sitting in a container ship in the port of Long Beach, I think. But the ebook will be out in a week or two. And right now we're recording the audiobook, which is really, really fun. So I have one of the chapters was called Inspiration, and it's written by Brian Bandmiller. Brian Bandmiller is a pretty famous news guy in the Bay Area. He does Bandmiller on Business, and he wrote a chapter on inspiration. And Bandmiller, he's interviewed every president, every major business leader, Gorbachev, and so he talks about some of the really inspiring people that he's met. And then Susan Bratton wrote just I don't know if you know Susan.
Yes, Susan Bratton. Why do I know that name?
Yeah, she's what does she call herself? An intimate wellness expert. She's just incredible, and she wrote an amazing chapter on how to make love to a woman. And so she's going to do the voiceover for her chapter. Brian Bandmiller is going to do the voiceover for his chapter, and then
That's what I was going to ask.
Joe Starkey was the voice of the San Francisco 49ers during the Joe Montana era, and he actually called the play, that crazy play between the Stanford and Cal.
Yeah, what was
so-
his name? The receiver. What was it? What's the name? The play. Was it? You're talking about the end zone. The end zone.
The one where they kept lateraling the ball.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of a different. I was thinking
Yeah.
of a Super Bowl play where it was like a catch in the end zone. So I was thinking of a
Yeah, but so Joe Starkey, he narrates his chapter, and then I narrate some of my chapters. The hero's journey chapter, and then my own hero's journey, and then the sexual medicine chapters. And the sexual medicine chapters are really, really fun. I write it from two perspectives. One is from the perspective of a guy, kind of like in becoming attracted to the girl, and then the boy meets girl, and so on and so forth. And then I interject with a doctor's voice of like, okay, this is what's happening to the physiology.
The guide.
great,
The guide.
that's
So
great.
that's the
Right.
guide,
So
right?
exactly. So the first chapter is called Sex on the Beach,
Great.
and it's about what happens when things go right. And then the second chapter is erectile dysfunction explained. So we follow the same characters, but now, the guy's in his 50s, and he's got kids and jobs, and he's traveling, and in-laws and parents to take care of, and all the things that happen to us as we grow up as men. And all of a sudden he can't get an erection anymore. And okay, what happens in that situation, and how do we deal with that? But honestly, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but this is the one book that men between the ages of 35 to 85 need to own, and they need to read. And even though it's 900 pages, it's not like a fiction book that you have to read cover to cover.
Right.
You
can
read the
narrate
beginning.
it.
Like I have a chapter in the very, very beginning of the book, in the introduction, on how to read this book, and I compare the book to the buffet at Caesar's Palace, right? You got everything there, and everything's really good, and you get your plate and your knife and fork and your napkin, and then you go and you decide what you want to eat. And some people, they start with an appetizer and then go to a main course, and then they go to dessert. And other people, they pick and choose what they want. And some people use it to try foods that they've never tried before, and some people just stick with the foods that they like. This book, everyone has at least 10 or 15 chapters that directly relate to them. And then as you get older, maybe your prostate starts acting up, so you start reading my prostate chapter. Or maybe your vision starts to get
Right.
bad, so you read Dr. Mahuchi's vision chapter.
Yeah.
So it's a book that will grow old with you.
Yes, it's a resource. It's just a good
Exactly.
resource to have.
Exactly.
Yeah. My only
I'm
regret.
So excited to get it.
Yeah, same. My only regret is that like I feel like we could have done like 3 shows because there's so much in the book, but I think it's enough to get people really entice
Yeah.
people. I mean, I'm with you. You know, I'm sold. I cannot wait to read the whole thing. You know, you're welcome back anytime, Dr. Brandeis. I think this is
Yes,
going to
it's
be
always a great time.
massive resource for men.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a couple more things. I
Yeah.
really, I love being on the show with you guys. I love chatting with you guys. I'm probably going to be, well, I'm going to be in Florida, but in the Miami area, because I talk for BTL for M Sculpt, and I'm going to be
Okay.
in Miami on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of December.
Oh, okay, good.
But
Oh,
I'm glad it's not
interesting.
November.
the book is written for men. Okay, and what I mean by that is there's nothing more annoying to me than when I read a 300-page book and say to myself, you know what, that could have been 5 pages,
Yes.
right?
I get what you're
Yeah,
saying.
just give me the cliff notes. You know, like
Yeah,
I'll
gotta
pay
keep it
I'll pay you
more.
20 bucks for the book. I
Yeah.
don't care about that. Just give me the 5 pages of important information, right?
Yeah.
This is a 900-page book. This is the least number of words that
Possible.
I could put this amount of information into.
So good. So good.
This book, when most people would have written this book in 5,000 pages, right? I labored over this book to make it 900 pages. And like, seriously, every word in the book counts. It's so information dense. If it's 101 chapters, and each chapter is on like a topic that textbooks are written on.
Wow.
But I had guys that are and gals that cherry pick the information that just are presenting the important information just for you. But at the same time, I wanted to make it fun. So like every chapter has a quote that are people from our generation, like Robin Williams and Woody Allen and George Steinbrenner. Like there's the chapter on cocaine. Robin Williams was quote was cocaine's God's way of telling you have too much money.
That's so good.
Or the chapter I read on orgasm, there's a Woody Allen quote: I want to live my life backwards. I want to start dead and end up as an orgasm. Right? So, like, I mean, it should be fun. So I tried to make the
Meta
book fun
quote.
also.
That's a very meta quote
Yeah,
because
it's
for,
good.
for the people who don't know that the origin, the etymology of orgasm is little death.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
That's great.
So, I really encourage your listeners to, we'll have the ebook out in a week or two. We'll have the audio book out in sections starting in about a month. And then hopefully my ship will come in and we'll get the hardcover book out in December.
well, we are
Incredible.
looking forward to it, Doctor. Thank you so much for coming back on. Great as always, and we really look forward to everybody, not just us, reading this book.
Awesome. And I have to go do a vasectomy right now. So I got to get going.
All right, all right.
All right.
Amazing.
He's gonna have
Have
we're
a
gonna
good
make his
one.
life fun.
All right. Sounds
All right,
good.
Dr. Brandeis, take care.
That's the vasectomy is the gift that stops the giving.
What a great way to end it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Have a good one.
Okay.
Thank you.